So today we're talking about inverse functions. Inverse functions are real easy. At the very core, you know what the inverse is? The inverse is just what happens when you switch the x and the y from the original. What do I mean? Let's go dual screen, right? I'm going to write the answer to this question in green. What happens when you switch them? It becomes, yep, good, -4, 5. That's the inverse. That's it. Is it a function? Very good. Yeah. None of the x values repeat. Great job, Kev. Great job. So we're going to do 2a. Now I'm going to split them up. We're going to do each one in parts. What's the inverse of y equals 3x plus 5? So now I didn't give you a bunch of coordinates. Now I gave you an equation, and I got to show you how to find the inverse of an equation. And we're going to have to use special kind of notation to indicate that it is the inverse. So how do you find the inverse? How do you find the inverse? What did I tell you the inverse was? What do you do? To find the inverse, switch x and y. Switch x and y. So this becomes x equals 3y plus 5. You got that? All I did was switch x and y. Now from here, isolate y. I genuinely like his enthusiasm. Right? I'm subtracting 5 from each side. So we get x minus 5 equals 3y. Then how do you get rid of that 3 in front of that y? You got to divide by 3. Yeah. And so x minus 5 divided by 3 equals y. Now here's the deal. In order to distinguish this equation from the original, this equation is the inverse, right? If it's the inverse, then here's what you do. You put a little -1 up there. It doesn't mean it's an exponential power. That's just how we indicate something's the inverse. So in the next part, we're going to sketch a graph of the original. We're not going to do it perfectly. Don't worry about that because we don't have graph paper. We're just going to make a sketch of the graph, maybe by looking at it through our calculator, which will make an accurate picture. And we're also going to sketch a graph of the inverse. Okay? You ready? You do need a calculator. So on your sheet of paper, do me a favor. Just draw a coordinate grid. Label the x-axis the x-axis. Label the y-axis the y-axis. Right? It takes 2 seconds to do. You see how I put arrows at the end of everything? Yeah. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to draw a sketch. Okay, so here's the original. Y equals 3x plus 5. We have some people in here that need to pass their algebra regents. So tell me, in the original equation, y equals 3x plus 5, what does 3 stand for? Is it the slope or the y-intercept? It's the slope. It's the slope. This number at the end, what is that? Very nice. So everybody break out your calculators, and let's just see what a picture looks like. Type in 3x plus 5 and hit the graph button. And all I want you to do is draw that picture on your little sketch over here. Yeah. I'm going to go and I'm going to draw it in just like this. I'm okay with your sketch looking like this for the time being. Okay? It's perfect. Your notes are perfect. Now the other equation is going to be a little tricky to plug in. A little tricky to plug in. I want you to see something. I'm going to actually take this equation over here and I'm going to draw it in red. Do you know you could break that up? You could break that up. Another way that you could have written this is there's a 1 in front of the x. And so this is also the same thing as saying 1/3 x minus 5/3 equals y to the negative 1. It's the same thing. Let's plug that into our calculator and see what a picture looks like. What's up? Let's do 1/3 x minus 5/3. We're going to hit the graph button. I'm going to make my graph a little darker because I know how to do this. It colors things in. And watch. There's the inverse. Oh, how do you make it darker? You can change the color and change the functions of things by going over here. And you see where these slanty bars are? If you just hit enter on them, you can change stuff about them. Okay? So I made mine darker. And I'm going to draw it in red. So here you go. Here's the inverse. Draw it in. This is y inverse equals 1/3 x minus 5/3. I'm sorry if that's a little cramped to see. You see it? You see what they look like? Okay, good. Now here's one last feature that I wanted to show you. Let me see if I can get a good color to draw it in. Lines. I want to get a nice green line going in. You see that line right there? Now I think I might have done not the bestest job in the whole world. Oh, let me see if I can. Let me see if I could. Ooh. Yeah, it's not the axis of symmetry. The green line is a very famous line. It's the line y equals x. Okay? It's a very famous line because, and let's put this down. This is something that you should know. The inverse can also be formed by reflecting the original over, whoops, line y equals x. They once said math should be in the morning. A long time ago, because that's when you're the most focused. At the end of the day, then you get tired a little bit, and sometimes you're just not into it. But hold on. So let's talk about what I just told you. The inverse is also formed by reflecting the original over y equals x. Take a look. Everything on the blue line is reflected over. It's almost as if the green line acts as a mirror. And you see, that's another way to get the inverse. This is our last problem of the day, and then we're done. Okay? Last problem of the day, and then we're done. So now I'm going to use, instead of using y's and x's, I'm going to use function notation. Let's draw a little line over here. Let's draw a little bomb just to remind you of function notation. Anywhere that you see an f of x, anywhere you see that, you can replace, can be replaced with a y. What do I mean? I mean that this original problem that we have up over there, right? Example. Suppose I give you f of x equals 3x. Could you rewrite this with a y? And if so, what would it look like? You're the man, Enrique. Thank you. It's the same thing as saying y equals 3x. So now, let's go and try and find the inverse. Right? Yeah. This is a way of asking to find the inverse with that -1 up over there. So let's do it. Let's find the inverse. What are we going to do? First thing we're going to do is write it down with a y. Y equals 3x. Then what do you do when you try and find the inverse? Yeah, you change it. What do you do after you change it? Divide by 3 and try and get y by itself. X divided by 3 equals y inverse. In other words, x divided by 3 equals f inverse of x. They are the same thing. They mean the exact same thing. If you wrote your answer on your test like this, I would take that. If you wrote your answer like this, it would be better. We got part B. Can you guys see, or is the board getting blurry? Okay. You guys I got fooled. So, how much is the inverse worth at, what did I want it at? At 2? Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote C by accident. What's the matter? What's the value of the inverse at 2? All you do is plug that into the inverse equation. So you get x over 2. That's it. That's the answer. No, I'm sorry. What am I thinking? What am I thinking? You plug 2 in for x. Kevin? Thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy. So the inverse at 2 equals 2/3. That's the answer. Sorry. I got glitched up there for a minute.